Can you imagine working tirelessly only to find that your paycheck barely covers your basic needs of housing and food? Shocking, isn't it? It's a grim reality for a significant number of Americans today. They're caught in a relentless cycle of financial hardship. The cost of living is soaring, with the price tags on basic necessities like housing and food reaching unprecedented highs. Imagine the struggle of keeping a roof over your head when housing prices are spiraling out of control. It's no longer just about owning a home. It's about the struggle to even afford rent. The cost of food, too, is on an upward trajectory, turning what should be a basic human right into a luxury that many can't afford. This isn't a problem confined to a single state or city. It's a nationwide crisis, a silent epidemic that's sweeping across the country. It doesn't discriminate. It affects people from all walks of life, from the bustling cities to the quiet rural towns. But why is this happening? And more importantly, who's responsible? The truth is, our politicians play a significant role in this crisis. They're the ones pulling the strings, the ones who have the power to make a change. Yet, it seems the well-being of the American people isn't their priority. Their focus appears to be elsewhere, on issues that serve their interests, rather than those of the people they've sworn to represent. The consequences of their choices, or lack thereof, are evident in the growing divide between the haves and the have-nots. The American dream, the promise of a better life for those willing to work for it, is becoming increasingly elusive. The disparity is glaring and it's growing. It's a crisis that's happening right under our noses, yet it remains largely unseen and unaddressed. The question that arises is, who bears the brunt of these skyrocketing prices? Scene script. Meet John and Jane, a typical middle-class American couple working full-time and still struggling to meet their basic needs. Both John and Jane clock in 40 hours a week, sometimes even more. They're hard-working individuals who, like many middle-class Americans, are trying to juggle their day-to-day expenses. Despite their full-time jobs, they find themselves grappling with the rising costs of basic necessities such as housing and food. Imagine this. John and Jane work tirelessly, yet the cost of their apartment rent eats up almost half of their combined income. They are constantly on the lookout for a more affordable place to live, but their search has been futile. Affordable housing, it seems, is becoming a myth for the middle class. Then there's the issue of food. Even with careful budgeting, the grocery bills seem to be climbing higher each month. They are not splurging on gourmet items or expensive cuts of meat. No, they're just trying to put wholesome, nutritious meals on the table for themselves and their 2 children. And let's not forget about the other expenses: healthcare, education, transportation, utilities. The list goes on. Every paycheck is stretched thin, with little to nothing left for savings. John and Jane's situation is not unique. Across the country, countless middle-class Americans are facing the same dilemma. They are working, often more than one job, yet still struggling to keep up with the cost of living. The American dream, it seems, is becoming harder and harder to attain for the average middle-class family. So why is this happening? Why are full-time workers like John and Jane finding it increasingly challenging to afford a decent standard of living? The answers to these questions are complex and multifaceted. But one thing is clear: the struggle of the middle class is real, and it's happening right now. John and Jane's story is not an isolated case, but a stark reality for many. Now let's turn our attention to Lisa, a single mother working 2 jobs and still failing to provide adequately for her family. Lisa's story is far from unique. She's part of a group we call the working poor, individuals who work full-time, often holding down multiple jobs, yet find themselves unable to meet the basic needs of their families. Like many others, Lisa faces an uphill battle against the rising cost of living. Despite working nearly 60 hours a week, her income barely covers her rent, let alone the cost of food, utilities, healthcare, and the myriad other expenses that crop up. But let's focus on housing. In many parts of America, the cost of rent continues to outpace wage growth. Lisa spends more than half of her income on a modest two-bedroom apartment, a common scenario for many low-wage workers. This leaves her with little to no room for savings, and a single unexpected expense can throw her into financial chaos. And then there's food. The cost of a basic, nutritious diet can be prohibitively expensive for families like Lisa's. She often finds herself facing a heartbreaking choice: buying cheaper, less nutritious food, or going without meals so her kids can eat. This is the reality for millions of hard-working Americans. They're not lazy or unwilling to work. They're simply caught in a system that doesn't reward their effort with a livable wage. They work tirelessly, yet still struggle to provide for their families. It's important to remember that Lisa's story isn't just a tale of personal struggle. It's a reflection of a wider issue that affects millions of Americans. The working poor are not a statistical anomaly, but a product of systemic issues that need our attention and action. Lisa's struggle is a testament to the fact that working hard is not always enough in today's economy. It's a sobering reminder that we, as a society, need to do more to ensure that hard work pays off and that everyone has a fair shot at a decent life. The stories of John, Jane, and Lisa raise a critical question: where do our politicians stand in all of this? The answer, unfortunately, may not be as comforting as we'd like. When we examine the financial hardship of housing and food prices, we find that political decisions and policies have played a significant role in fueling this crisis. Let's consider housing first. Over the past few decades, policies have often favored the interests of large property developers over everyday citizens. Zoning laws, for instance, have been manipulated in ways that restrict the supply of affordable housing, driving up prices and making it more difficult for people like John, Jane, and Lisa to find homes they can afford. Now, let's turn to the cost of food. Agricultural policies have frequently prioritized the profits of large agribusiness corporations over the needs of consumers and small farmers. This has led to the rise in food prices and the decline of local farming, leaving families struggling to put meals on the table and farmers unable to make a living. In both these instances, we see a lack of political will to address these issues. Too often, politicians choose to prioritize the interests of the wealthy and powerful over the needs of their constituents. They may talk a good game when it comes to caring for the people, but their actions often tell a different story. We need politicians who are willing to confront these challenges head-on, who are willing to make tough decisions even when they're not popular. Politicians who are willing to put the needs of the people first, rather than catering to the interests of the few. So, as we reflect on the stories of John, Jane, and Lisa, let's also remember the role that political decisions and policies play in shaping their experiences. Let's remember that it's not enough for politicians to say the right things. They need to do the right things as well. It's clear that our politicians need to do more than just talk the talk. The time for change is now. But how can we, as ordinary citizens, bring about this change? We've delved into the unseen crisis, the struggle of the middle class, the plight of the working poor, and the role politicians play in all this. But what can we do? How can we fight against the financial hardship of housing and food prices? Well, it starts with you, and it starts now. It starts with all of us taking a stand. But how, you might ask? Let's break it down. First off, voting. It's the most powerful tool in our arsenal. It's the way we can hold our politicians accountable. It's how we ensure our voices are heard. So come election time, research your candidates, understand their policies, and make an informed decision. Vote for those who prioritize the needs of the people over their personal gains. Secondly, reach out to your representatives. They are there to serve you. Write to them, call them, make your concerns known. Inform them of the financial hardship you, your neighbors, your friends, and your family are facing. Demand they take action on housing and food prices. And thirdly, get involved with advocacy groups. These are organizations dedicated to fighting for causes like ours. They work tirelessly to bring about change, and they can always use more hands on deck. Whether it's by volunteering your time, donating, or simply spreading the word, your contribution can make a significant difference. You see, we are not powerless. We have the ability to effect change, to shape the world in which we live. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But if we all take a stand, if we all use our voices, we can start to turn the tide. Remember, change starts with you. Don't let the financial hardship of housing and food prices become the new normal. Let's stand together and make a difference. It's time for change, and it starts with us.